Hello and welcome to this instalment of Talking Trim. I'm Jonathon Skinner and today we are looking at the centre console and centre cushion armrest for the Austin Healey 3000 BJ8. What we've got here in this video is a mix of the phase 1 and the phase 2, and then a bit of detailing on sort of the hardware elements of them and the very basics of the sort of trimming process in terms of how they go together. It's not meant to be a guide on how to trim them, it's just more of a guide of what they're meant to look like when they're finished and how our kits kind of work to get that finish. So what we've got here on the left in red, plus these two old and new foams here, is the phase 1 version of the BJ8 console and armrest. Pretty rare, only up until around 26,704 on the chassis numbers, so you don't see many of them around. The most common feature of it compared to the much more seen phase 2 version is the console itself is quite a bit longer and the armrest is quite a bit shorter, and it has a hinged cubby box in it. In the blue here we've effectively got the phase 2 version, so from 26,705 onwards, I believe, or thereabouts. And this, like I say, is by far and away the more commonly seen version. We've got a sort of fully trimmed up console there. As you can see, it's shorter, and then the armrest at the back there is longer and doesn't have a hinge on it. What we've got here is a part trimmed console, as well as the aftermarket metalwork and the foam padding kit that make up that kit there. So just to show you in the book what we're talking about this center console here with you can see the radio grill and a 3000 badge. Then you've got the armrest that sits just behind it here. All of these photos here are actually showing the phase 2, the much more commonly seen version. Phase 1s were so rare, they're not in that book. So what we've got, phase 1 obviously has been made using customers' original hardware panels, the console and the armrest, as you can't buy the phase 1s in the aftermarket. And then phase 2 is a real mix. You've got the original armrest hardware, got an aftermarket hardware there, and then the console here, the one on the left, is the actual framework itself is aftermarket, and that's the original one, and I'll explain why we've done it like that when I get to it. But let's dive on into the phase 1, because this is by far and away the like I say, the less commonly seen one, and you really don't see these around much at all, so it's nice to actually have one on site to trim. You can see straight away the difference in the length of them. Now overall, obviously the combo measurement of that and that together plus that and that together would equal the same distance front to back pretty much. They kind of start and end in the exact same positions, but obviously the sort of percentage distance of that and that obviously mixed between the two kits. We've done this one here in full leather. It's in our smooth Matador red leather, so not much of a grain to it at all. We can offer a grained finish as well for most of our colours, so do see our website for more details on that. So full leather, which wasn't original for the cars at all. The BJ8s commonly left with Vinyl Ambla trim throughout, actually. Sometimes the seats and the centre armrest were what they refer to as leather. We call that leather faced, which is basically that top part there would be leather, and the side elements would be vinyl on those there, and that kind of tied in with the seats, which were often leather faced as well as an optional extra. But the majority of the seats on the BJ8s were left in Vinyl Ambla, and the armrest would have matched accordingly. But the consoles themselves, apart from sort of special orders from the factory, would have always been in sort of Vinyl Ambla. But like I said, this one has been done in leather. The gentleman has gone for a full leather trim kit, so all the trim panels, seats, etc., everything's leather. Now we've skived these side bits and top bit down to get a nice finish. We're one of the only companies in the world in the restoration industry that has an in-house leather skiving machine, which thins down. It takes the back off the leather, and it's perfect for kits like this where you need that extra thinness, shall we say, to get a nice finish to it. Customer supplied his original chrome works for one going around the sort of gear lever area, and also the side trims there. Again, I don't believe any of these side chromes are available in the aftermarket anymore. We are looking into getting some made, but as of yet have yet to find a competent supplier to make them for us, but watch this space. This element here is a mix. The actual grille is the original, but the surround is an aftermarket one, as his original surround was knackered. The pins on the back of it were all broken, so we replaced that for him. He hasn't sent us the badge, so we haven't trimmed that up, hence why it's missing. Same again on the ashtray, he hasn't sent us the ashtray, so that's why that's missing. But yeah, as you can see, really nice job. It's got this sort of lip on it down here, and this element here, and that you can see very clearly where it's all going to tuck in effectively. It sits on that lip there, goes all in the car with, I believe, a screw to retain this in place, as you can see. But yeah, good job. There's speakers on the back of this one. He sent us the speaker but didn't send us the ashtray. Hey ho. But yeah, you can see the nice cuts around the hole. It's worth noting as well, the side bits here and this top parts here all have a 3mm foam scrum on them to give them a bit of padding. And then going around this hole here, this is the sort of cuts you want to be doing to get a nice neat finish. So everything's been done to a lovely standard there, and it will look great when it's all in the car. I hope to get some photos off him when it's all said and done. Moving on to the armrest, like I say, very rare, has a hinge element to it. So the framework itself and the ply that this top part is trimmed onto, and this panel here, they're all the original ones, but we have replaced the inner millboard lining in there, as his was a bit knackered. And then again, we've trimmed it all in smooth Matador red leather. Again, some of these pieces, mainly the surround element here, have all been skived down, as has this piece here, to allow for a better finish. In our kits as well, what we do, this front edge here, we supply a small rectangle of material which is actually used to kind of finish off this edge here. We find it's a lot easier to do that in a separate piece than trying to get the material to wrap around. We do actually make the material long enough to wrap all the way around, so you could trim around that front piece there, but we also supply this extra finisher in there because we found it's much easier to trim that separately, and when it's all said and done in the car, it's really not going to be seen. So it's a nice way of doing it. It's a bit of a cheat code almost on that one. But yeah, as you can see, lovely finish. The hinges, yeah, they worked. Unfortunately, they're not the best condition, but he was happy for us to reuse them. I guess you pick your battles on these sorts of things, and that's what we kind of offer with these elements of things, is we can, you know, try and replace absolutely everything and get it looking sparkling new, but we work with our customers to see, you know, what sort of budget and where they want to prioritize their money being spent. So sometimes people go, no, that's absolutely fine, I'm happy to live with slightly worn original hinges and things like that. But like I say, we can offer sort of new pieces if they are available. Top piece trimmed in, and what I've done is I have kept the original foam, and then I'm showing you one of ours that went in there, and you can kind of see the difference in the thickness there. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because if you look at that when it's all trimmed, it's nowhere near the height of that there, and it's slightly more than that there. And the reason being, obviously this is sort of 50-60 years old, and thus almost certainly it's compressed more than it would have done originally. And then we also get the other element of things where people go, oh, the foam you supplied is way too big compared to the original. Of course, you've got the two extremities here. You've got this is crushed and almost certainly not as plump as it used to be, and this is brand new. And what you need to be doing during the trimming process is really compressing that down. These covers aren't sort of plug and play. You don't just sort of wrap them over and put no tension on them. You want to be putting tension to really manipulate the foam and expand the cover out so that it's nice and firm underneath there. It needs a, sort of all these little tips and tricks that you can do sometimes. And you know, we get quite a few people that are hobbyists, enthusiastic hobbyists, trimming things, even professional trimmers sometimes, questioning these sorts of heights of foams and assuming that, you know, something's been made wrong, but actually a lot of it's done by design. We don't take half measures here, and if we do something a certain way, there's normally a reason for it. So just ask the question, more than happy to help. But please do have trust and faith that we kind of know what we're talking about with these sorts of things. So you can see there the amounts, if I line that up at the bottom, the amount of difference there, and that's all because of the pressure that you're putting on it during the trimming process, which is why there's no creases or crinkles in that at all. It looks absolutely beautiful. So yeah, that is the phase 1 version, which, like I say, you do not see many of. On to the way more seen phase 2 version. So this has been done in our Austin Healey blue, which is a dark blue, but it's lighter than what we call dark blue, just to confuse things. Be sure to check out the materials and colours library for this. Basically, for Healey kits, as I'm sure you're aware if you're familiar with my videos, the Healey kits, it's a bit of a subject of debate what shade of, in inverted commas, dark blue they used. We have our dark blue, which is really dark. We also have our Austin Healey blue, which is still dark but lighter, and depending on who you ask, they're both original for the Healey range, and I'm sure original factory inconsistencies had something to play with that. But just so you're aware, you know, that's why we offer 2 versions of it. So this is the AH blue, slightly lighter than the dark blue. Trimmed up frame, original one. Again, it's a bit warped and whatnot, but generally speaking, it's in decent condition. The gentleman got it sandblasted and painted, etc. And we've retrimmed it. This is just in Vinyl Ambla. And same again on the console there. And obviously he sent us his ashtray, his chromes. We've resprayed this and put the badge back on, and that's obviously for the grill, but we haven't got the speaker on that one there. So you can see straight away the length differences between the consoles there. But turned out lovely. Obviously the length differences also affect the chromes on those, but like I say, the chromes are not available in the aftermarket, but we are working on it. And same principle again, this will tuck underneath. You can see there's a very distinctive lip there. There is on this too if you push that down. So that sits there. In fact, what you're imagining it's going onto is that there. That is the lip that it sits on. Obviously the foam sits on top like that. So yeah, that gets trimmed all the way. Again, trimmed all the way around. We strip the piping out on this section here to allow for easier fitment within there, but again that just sits effectively on top of that and gets screwed in. Now it's worth noting that well, actually I'll come to that on the center console piece. There we go. So yeah, that's that element there. Aftermarket metalworks, they're good enough. For complete transparency, which is what we like to do, we do use other, should we say, wholesalers' hardware items. We try and source obviously the best versions. There are a few wholesalers that sell these items, so we source the best versions. But unfortunately, as with a lot of things these days, sometimes the kits are a little bit questionable, but they're good enough, and that's the key. And what we like to be as transparent as possible. Is, you know, we get people that occasionally complain about the aftermarket frameworks for both these items and the seats, because they're not exactly the same as the originals, but they're the best you can get, and that's the key. If your originals are in decent condition, we always encourage people to reuse their originals. But if you haven't got any originals, or they're in not very good condition, then you have to make do with the best of the aftermarket, and that's where we come in with sourcing things. We make all of our material kits internally, and we offer the best in the industry at that, and we're very confident on that element of things, as our enthusiasts and club forum people all over the world. But with certain elements of the frameworks, we source the best versions we can, but we're not saying they're perfect, and unfortunately we don't have much control over that. We do feed back to them, but sometimes it's like banging your head against a brick wall. But I just want to make people aware and clear that although some of those pieces are kind of aftermarket pieces, we do try and use the best versions, but that doesn't mean they're perfect, and you just have to use a bit of common sense and ask for help and advice if you're having any issues on it, to make sure that you can achieve the best results given those should we say indifferences to the original parts. Anyway, so that will lead on to what I'm about to say here. That part there for the most part works absolutely fine. What we do recommend doing is actually dummy fitting all of these parts together before you trim anything up if you're using any aftermarket pieces. Dummy fit them together, make sure they fit together, which ties into what we've got here with this original frame and this aftermarket frame. Was we did all of the trimming work here, but my trimmer unfortunately had forgotten to put these parts in first, and then we realized after the fact that the hole in the back of this, which you can see is not a rectangle, had been cut for a custom radio and speaker in the past, and the customer was unaware of it, so we had to undo all of our trimming work and swap things over. Obviously we mentioned it to the customer, and he was fine with us using an aftermarket one so that the grill could be used, etc. But it just goes to show that even the experts, it's a lesson learned when you should really just get everything fitted loosely to the frameworks to make sure that they all interchange with one another the way they should do if you're using aftermarket pieces or a couple of aftermarket pieces, or even, you know, in this case an original piece that's not necessarily that's been altered over the years or whatever. So you can see the groove lines here of where the chromes were sat, but it gives a nice indication. This is the reason I've included it in the video. So you can see the underside here, and you can see the holes that pin in the chrome all the way up, and you notice the distance from the edge there, and you'll see that the aftermarket ones, they're pretty good, but actually some of them, certainly down in these corners here, were really quite problematic to get to and get the screws in without sort of bashing the side, which really made it a long-winded job. So it's just all these little things to be aware of. But like I say, when you've got certain pieces that aren't usable, you have to just revert to what is available in the aftermarket, and sometimes they do, should we say, 85 to 90% of the job well, and the last 10% or so you just have to make do and make it the best effort. And there's no point getting frustrated. You know, I have my trimmer cursing, should we say, about the elements of the screws, because they went into that one relatively easy, but that one was an absolute pain, and he was a few expletives, shall we say. But there's no point, you know, it is what it is. And I was sort of explaining to him that we're in the position we're in, we just have to get on and do it. So it's a good attitude to have with these things. Anyway, getting back to the trimming element of these bits and bobs. So this has all been done in the vinyl. Obviously it's foamed again there, and then the chromes go up the sides, and like I said, the grill and a 3000 sign there, then that sits over the top. The ashtray sits in there, that's an original ashtray, and they all plunk together like that. Same principle again on the foam. This is the foam that sits on top here. Now this one's a bit different. That one's very short and sculpted, etc. This one is a long rectangle. You're gonna trim some of this off. You can see the difference in the length there. We actually end up cutting these in bulk from excess foams that we have in the shop here. So they're often slightly different lengths, but they're always longer than they need to be, and you just want to take a bit of common sense in cutting that down. But we always say, don't cut it fully down to where you think it's going to sit, i.e. there. Always go a bit longer. You want to make sure that you have that compression in it enough to really give it some formation and shape to it. It's obviously easier to cut more off, impossible to put, well, it's not impossible to put more back on, you can glue it back on, but ideally just go in little slices and work out the best way of doing it. Chicken turkey cutters are fantastic for cutting this sort of foam, just FYI, nice little tidbit there. But yeah, I think that kind of covers it. Be sure to check out the description below. There's undoubtedly going to be something I've missed. I do all these videos off the top of my head, hence why we spiraled into almost 20 minutes. So apologies for that. Thanks for staying with me if you have. But yeah, check out the description below. There's going to be useful information there. There's also going to be useful links to other videos that I may have done showing similar items or other parts that you're going to need to consider for your 3000 BJ8 restoration. As ever, please make any applicable comments below. Please remember to like, subscribe and share with other classic car enthusiasts, and thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time.